Hey everyone, I thought I'd just give you a very quick live update on the Posh Outdoors crowdfunding raise. For those who don't know what Posh Outdoors is, it's our brand new luxury glamping development company. All the details are in the description, so just go and check that out if you want to learn more. For those who do know what Posh is, as of Monday, August the 19th, which is when I'm recording this, we have raised $317,000 in the crowdfunding pot. That's come from 56 investors in total, many of which have come from the Glampetex community, including podcast listeners. We're incredibly grateful for those who have already invested and showed support in what we're doing, and we'd love for more of you to join us for the ride. If you're thinking about investing, now might be the best time to do it because our early bird terms expire at $450,000, which means we have just over $133,000 worth of early bird terms left. For those wondering what the early bird terms mean, it basically means you get more shares for your money. Although if you want the full explanation, there's a link to schedule a call with me in the description of this episode, so go ahead and do that after you've checked out the Posh Outdoors page. We are so excited about this. Investor sentiment has reflected that. We really think the early bird terms will sell out very quickly. They're nearly gone already, so if you do want to invest, if you are curious, do check out the Posh Outdoors page, do schedule that call with me and do it quickly so you don't miss out. There will be opportunities beyond the early bird terms, but it just now is the best possible time to invest if you want the most bang for your buck. So check out the page, schedule that call, and we'll speak soon. On to the episode. So we've got Ben Wolff and Irene Wood on today. Ben Wolff of Onera, Irene from the Fields. Both previous podcast guests, so as usual the links will be in the description. You are very much aware of Ben before today's episode, right, but not so much of Irene. So I guess tell me a little bit about your thoughts on Ben.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting model, and I like Ben because he's a go-getter, he's like, he doesn't settle on his concepts, even they seem grandeur, right? But it's very clear that Ben has a plan to get to the end goal, which is really nice. So I'm interested to see his responses on on the flip side of this on Irene. Obviously, my background is closer to Irene's background.
Yeah, and I was thinking this. So today's topic is hands-on versus hands-off hospitality. We've in the course of doing this podcast, come across kind of two distinct models of operating glamping and outdoor hospitality businesses. One being very much traditional, hands-on, meet the guests, check-in staff, etc. The other being more hands-off. The idea is you don't really see any staff on site. There's minimal kind of hands-on hospitality, and it's kind of the seclusion and the privacy is the value of the stay. Ben is very much on the hands-off side of things, although I'm sure it takes a lot of work to get to that point, as we're going to discuss today. Irene is very much on the hands-on side of things. So that's what we wanted to dig into today. And without further ado, here's Ben and Irene. Hello and welcome back to the Unique Hospitality Podcast. Today we are joined by two previous guests, Ben Wolff and Irene Wood, as discussed in the intro. We're going to get straight into it as kind of a recap for anyone who didn't listen to their previous episodes. Ben, starting with you, do you want to just give a bit of a brief background on yourself and Onera and the kind of model that you use, and then we'll flip over to Irene.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm Ben Wolff, co-founder, creator of Onera, which is an upscale treehouse hotel brand, landscape resort brand in Texas Hill Country. Our first property was in Fredericksburg. We sold to an institutional investor, Summit Hotel Properties, and we're now expanding our first property, Onera Fredericksburg, from 11 to 34 keys. And we're about a month out from opening our second location, which is in Wimberley, Texas, a beautiful hill country town with amazing dramatic views. And that one's opening in a month. 28 units, event space, infinity pool. It's going to be pretty special. And I also have a company that I co-founded, Awasi, that provides services for pretty much full stack of needs within the unique stays and landscape hotel space. So design, build, management, marketing, from soup to nuts. So that's me.
And when we're focused on the model today, we'll talk primarily Onera. So what kind of units do you have? What's the unit count? What kind of daily rate are you charging, etc.?
Yeah. So it's a wide mix of units at Onera Fredericksburg, our first location. So we have tree houses, container homes, safari tents, domes. We have a very eclectic mix. And with the expansion there, we're continuing with that. So we're adding 23 units, and there's 14 different types. So a whole bunch of new styles coming your way. And then Onera Wimberley is tree houses. So these tube style tree houses called the Spyglass, which we have one of in Fredericksburg. And there's one new unit type in Wimberley called the greenhouse, which has vegetated rooftops. So it's got native prairie grasses and wildflowers growing on the roof that helps it blend into the hillside.
And Irene, how about the fields?
I know, I was just listening to Ben. I'm like, holy shit, the complexity. So I have the fields, one site. I am the founder, the owner operator. We have a little different than Ben. We up till this year, we had one unit, one type. We have 24 keys. This year we added hard sided for a number of reasons, which I'm happy to kind of share and talk about. It's a new product, extends the season a little bit longer, but we really kind of deploy what I would call the Southwest model for a lot of reasons, but one of which is, maintenance, repair, housekeeping, just kind of makes it really easy and fast and consistent, especially for our model, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which is that high touch model where our majority of our labor we want to put towards guest interface. That having minimal, different types of housekeeping rooms makes it really easy for girls, guys to figure out how to housekeep it.
And, on the topic of, hands-on / kind of high-touch hospitality, what is your model in that regard? So, you have lots of staff milling about, right?
Yeah, we do. So actually, I think that oftentimes operators follow a model in which they enjoy. So in my case, I love probably along the lines of auberge. I love when there's lots of people wanting to take care of me. In that same regard, we have lots of people, staff wanting to take care of our guests. So everything from check-in to check-out, housekeeping, nightly fires, food service, concierge, guest. I don't want to call it a guest interface, but we have somebody that contacts the guest prior to the stay, after the stay. So we do put a lot of labor towards high touch points with our guests that we find significant value in.
So Ben, you must absolutely hate people then.
No, it's interesting that Irene says that, though. I think I probably do err more to the side of seclusion, privacy. I want the unit well appointed, but I'll call you, don't call me kind of thing for sure. I probably fall more into that bucket. I will say that for us and kind of how we market is around that privacy and seclusion. And we're certainly marketing romantic stays. I personally don't like overly deferential hospitality either. I've experienced that at some big brands like, the Ritz is kind of notorious for that, where it's like almost feels like you have a butler. And for me, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of awkward. I don't like it. So we do have on-site staff. Certainly sounds like not as many as Irene. We have one on-site staff person besides for cleaners. We also have full-time cleaners as well, but one on-site GM at Onera Fredericksburg, which is 11 keys. When we expand to 34 there and 28 in Wimberley, we'll have 2 full-time staff members, a GM, a maintenance manager, and then 4 or 5 full-time cleaners, plus a director of sales, so group sales and event bookings. And we also have a massive offshore team that helps us ensure that we have very fast response times to our guests, and we are checking in on them. But we allow our on-site staff to only get looped in when there's actually a pressing need for them to handle something on site. And we try to do good quality control between guests and to make sure that everything is as it should be when they arrive. And if guests need, more coffee, towels, whatever it may be, our on-site staff person can handle that. But at least 50% or more of the requests and questions our offshore team can handle. And they're really top notch in the Philippines, minimal accent, aim to please. And we really just try to hire the best we can over there. And the same thing with our on-site employees. That's one thing that I've found. Having few employees, we've tried to have more sort of maybe more mid-end salaries, and we've had to kind of push that to the higher end of salaries and perks like on-site housing we now offer because we have so few people. We need those people that are on site to be really extraordinary. So that's what we've pushed into.
I'd love to know a little bit about the pre-arrival experiences for both of what that looks like for both of you. Irene, what does that pre-arrival guest experience look like for the fields?
I'm going to start with two things. We use a booking platform that does push notifications, and they're all generated through email. However, we have added 2 additional communication levels prior to guest arrival. So our booking platform, when somebody books, they'll get the typical thank you for your reservation, and then very similar to what you would see with OpenTable, you have a reservation in 60 days. This is the last day to cancel. And then about a month prior to their arrival, there will be a email that comes that's generated from our own team that contacts every guest, and it says, we're so excited for your arrival. And then it gives them all the things that are happening in the area during their stay, which allows them to start planning their itinerary. It also has hot links to things like concierge and all the other activities that people can book through us for their benefit. It's just embedded in their email address. Then a week prior to their stay, they'll get one final text message. That text message comes from the team that's on site that says, this is the on-site communication. It's like ground control. We've been handed off from our office team to actually on-site team, which will say, we're so excited for your stay. Can you tell me if there's anything we need in your room? Do you have a dog? Do you have kids? Like those sorts of things that we can make sure we level up the experience. And then you can start to communicate with us directly here. This will be we are your on-site team. And so those are our pre-arrival experiences. And then the day of, we have a phone number, that same phone number they'll call when they arrive. We pick them up and then we escort them to their room because we do have off-site parking. We don't like people to park next to their accommodations.
Do you get any special requests during that process, or do you learn anything about the guest during that process that kind of that you would implement at the stay?
Always.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the fun, right? So we're celebrating an anniversary. There's a birthday. We're grieving. We want to be left alone. We want to be taken care of. Can you make a reservation? We couldn't get a reservation. Our dog's name is Bo. We have 3 dogs. And that allows our team to kind of make notations instead of racing to kind of catch up to it. So in their unit, there's dog bowls. There's the bottle of wine, and it's also the area of upsell for us. We do about as much in rooms as we do in revenue outside of rooms, which allows our team to kind of add additional staff. So if the room rate is $500, usually the extras for a guest during their stay is about $500. So we're getting double the amount of revenue because of that work.
And then Ben, I'm making a little bit of an assumption here, but I'm imagining you're preloading a lot of information into that pre-arrival. Is that correct? Or can you explain your pre-arrival and your other guest touch points?
Yeah, for sure. So we do send messages, of course, pre-arrival. There's a pretty lengthy and informative check-in instructions. We also connect with guests over text message, so they know exactly how they can get in touch with us during their stay. So yeah, we provide everything they need to know up front. We have an experiences page. I think probably similar to what Irene's describing. So we work with a lot of local third-party providers, tour operators, and massage therapists and private chefs, and we do provide some of the packages with our limited staff. So things like romantic packages, we'll put together flowers, candles, chocolates, things like that. But most of it is provided by third parties, and we use a platform called Way Experiences that integrates with us. And as soon as you are going through the checkout process, it asks you if you want to add these experiences, and you also get reminded a couple of days before arrival if there's anything you want to add.
I'd like to know each of your top selling upsells that you sell before they arrive.
Yeah, for us, it's all in-room experiences. We have, pretty, I would say, one-of-a-kind accommodations, and we often find that our guests really want to stay in their treehouse or in their dome or stay on property, really, despite the fact that we're right next to Fredericksburg, which is a pretty, bustling town and one of the more popular driving destinations in Texas. So our top ones are private chef, massage, and the number one is probably that romantic package. Just so many people are coming to celebrate, honeymoon, anniversary, birthdays. Like it's so celebratory in nature that one is very popular.
Ben, do you mind me asking what that includes, the romantic package? What's your cost, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so we have different levels for it. And I don't know all the exact prices offhand, but I think it's somewhere like the starting one is $75 or something like that, and the next one is like $125. And one of them includes a bottle of wine, the other one doesn't. They both include silk rose petals. We tried real and ruined a lot of sheets, so we moved to silk, and that's done well. We also provide them with some really nice battery op candles, just for fire reasons. We use the battery op ones, and chocolates. So that comes with both, and then bottle of wine on the more expensive one.
Do you think your team is at a heavy lift or a light lift for them?
For implementing?
Yeah, for executing.
Yeah, I would say on the 11 unit site, relatively light lift.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that would have a pretty healthy margin.
It does, for sure.
Irene, what's your top selling upsell?
So as I mentioned to you before, we have staff on site. We have 2 massage therapists that are full-time massage therapists for us. We have a full-time chef. So our number 1, 2, and 3 would be, we do serve what we'll call a supper styles dinner. Think of it very similar to Outstanding in the Field. It's a prefix menu. It starts at 6:30. Back to this kind of probably opposite of seclusion. One of our pillars is community. So we do a farm to table dinner 5 nights a week that guests can engage in. If they don't engage in it, we're open to the public for revenue, like a hotel would be. And it starts at 6:30. It's $75 a person plus, bottles of wine, which gets roughly each person to about $120 a person. So $240 a couple, not inclusive of, tip, gratuity, and any other additional things that they have. And then we do our massages. So our massage therapists are pretty much booked every day and every time slot. They do that. And then we have sales. So we're 3 miles as a crow's flies to Lake Michigan. So a lot of guests love that afternoon sale if they have families, evening sale with a bottle of wine and a picnic basket. Very similar to, actually modeled after the Montage in Palmetto Bluff, where they do the Voove basket or the Voove bike. Very similar to that. So, and then that's roughly about $400 a couple.
That's interesting. I mean, I think at the Grove we were at 30 FTE for the summer seasonally, and that sounds like significantly more staffing than both Ben and Irene have on site. So it's always interesting to know how people are executing.
You both mentioned as well the importance of finding good staff. It's a common problem that I hear a lot of operators have, is finding the right staff that they can trust and that will stay with them for a long time. So I'd be interested in knowing both of your methods for finding the good staff members that you can rely on.
Yeah, so for us, it's definitely been a journey. When we first started and we're trying to find this sort of catch-all GM that could kind of do it all, fix it. We had, 1 FTE besides for cleaners, and it needed to be live on site. And at that time, we were trying to find someone that was doing, RV or van life and wanted to do hookups and do that. And, that got us through the first year and a half. But as we started to scale and grow and offer more experiences, and we're trying to, up our hospitality even a bit, we sort of outgrew that model and had to level up, had to get real about, salaries. And really the biggest thing is we now provide on-site housing. So for all of our new properties, we have 2 one-bedroom apartments that are really nice. I mean, finished out similarly to the units. And that helps us attract from a broader regional demographic. We don't have to worry about people having to drive to and from the site. It's a nice perk. And then their salaries are still pretty close to in line with other GMs and maintenance managers, plus they get free housing. So that's been a strong selling point for us. And I think one of the big things too that's only really happened in the past year and a half is me becoming more prominent on social media and like putting more out there, building an audience, building a fan base. So when, we're out there looking for a hire, maybe they already know me and that's how we kind of bring them into the funnel. Or if they don't, they see the job and then they look me up or they look up the properties and, the podcasts I've been on and whatnot. And if they believe in, the vision that I have and the passion that I have, then like they're excited about the opportunity, and there's not a lot of work required in kind of transferring vision and passion because they already know what it is and they're already bought in.
Your big thing is it's like building in public, right? That's what you call it, where there's that different level of connection with that people have with your business, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I have to say, like, I didn't set out to be the face of this at all. It was one of those things that my team pushed me to do, because it's so effective for other folks like Isaac French at Live Oak Lake and Devin Lurup at Pacific Bend. Like, we saw, really great examples in this unique stay hospitality space. The Bolts with Bolt Farm Treehouse, of like the founders being up front and center. So we started doing that, and it's really been very effective in hiring, in recruiting clients for Owasi, for our marketing services and hotel management services and, design build services. So yeah, it's been really helpful. And it's nice too, because I look at it like I'm doing it for my team, not for myself. So it makes it easier to kind of put myself out there.
And imagine, Irene, that was your model. I'm sure you've touched every single aspect of your own property. You were front and center from the beginning, right? That was it.
Yeah, it was interesting. About year 2, I did a shift though. And here was the reason. Guests would show up wanting to meet. I'm sure, Ben, you feel this too. It's like, oh, I got to see the owner. And if I wasn't there, it was like somehow they bought the stay because Irene was there. And I was like, that is not scalable. That is not scalable. That is not scalable. We have got to find a different way, because the stay can't be dependent on if Irene's roaming the camp with her dogs. It has to be dependent on what are we delivering and how are we delivering it. And so I remember very vividly year 2 going, like, particularly COVID, I was on site every day, right? That was like such a unique time. Employees were terrified. You were getting tons of reservations. But I think it was right after that, I was like, I would get calls at home like, there's guests on here. They want to know, are you coming in today? And I thought, oh man, this is no good. This is no good. So I was like, I've got to make a shift so that this business can grow without Irene. And there's only so much energy you can give to your team and then to your guests. And because different than Ben, we're so high touch, that expectation was like, is she going to turn down my bed? Is she going to be here for coffee? It's like, I've created a monster. I got to get myself out of this, whirlwind.
So did you shift the focus to your staff?
No, we actually did it. If you looked at some of the social media, it was like, what are you going to be doing when you're here? What are you going to be seeing when you're here versus people? So lots of like no named people, so you could picture yourself in it, to just kind of remove from that, because that was, it was actually kind of funny. It was weird. It was like one of those moments I came home from my husband. I was like, wow, that was weird. These are weird phone calls. So anyway, but yeah, we're now past that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can let your GM be that person. I mean, that's what other owners have done to me. They're like, no, you're that person, right? It doesn't have to be me.
Yeah.
So like, let your property manager be that. I would be interested, Ben, is your property manager also working as your like overnight on call, right? Camp host, if you will, and then follow up to Irene. Do you have a camp host?
So Owasi, handles a lot of the management and guest communications associated with the property. So they're fielding, late night messages and calls and things like that. But yes, our on-site live-on staff are the folks that are also handling, emergencies off hours. And we do have part-time people that come in and like we'll relieve them so they can, get away for a couple of days and that sort of thing. But yeah, with our size and scale, the people that are on site are also, handling emergencies that require on-site help.
Like raccoons?
we spoke about raccoons 2 weeks ago.
They would be, yes, but that has not come up, thankfully. We've had some scorpions, but not raccoons.
Irene, how's your overnight raccoon patrol going at camp? What's your model for that?
So what we do is we had 2 years somebody stay on site overnight. And so we've collected 5 years of data, and we're now on year 6. And I'm going to knock on wood. We've only had 2 calls in that duration. So we have staff, because we do dinners that last till 11. We have staff usually there till 12 to do cleanup, do a final walkthrough of camp, put everybody to bed. But we've only had 3 calls in 6 years. So last year was the first time we just have, so we have a little bit of different model, employment model. So everybody that works at camp is local. And they've been with us for 6 years, and they all live within like a 3 mile vicinity of camp. So we just have phone forwarding. So if a guest calls, the first person that picks up gets the call and goes in. And it's usually me. But I would tell you, I think we've trained our guests really well. We have a very tidy camp that doesn't have any crazy stuff. There's enough movement on there over the last 6 years that we don't have animals that concern people. Most of the stuff that shows up, like the last one was a girl had gotten something in her eye at the beach, and it was like scraping her eye, and she needed a ride to the to the hospital because that was one. And then the other one was the middle of the night. There was a fire alarm that was going off, and it's high. It's at the 14-foot level, so somebody has to come in and take a look at that for reasons of people just knocking them off and there really being a concern. But yeah, we're really lucky.
Oh my gosh, I do not understand how. Like I think we were taking like 3 overnight calls a day. No, to be honest, maybe it's different markets, different strokes for different folks. I mean, I think it's like
Those tech bros that you had must have got too excited, Jacob.
I have no idea. I mean, it was just we got called about everything. I mean, our camp hosts were busy. I mean, we had quiet hours start at 10, right? And then we would do dinners on pop-ups and things like that and special events, which would go further. But like from 10 to like 6 in the morning, it was like camp hosts' phone, right? Like they had their own phone dedicated for guests, and everyone had that on their check-in materials. But it was like, yeah, I think it's a different market. I think it just goes to the guests. I mean, I feel like we had a very tidy operation. There wasn't a lot of ambiguity. We had a lot of returning guests, but I think part of the Mendocino Grove model is, yeah, you could get service at any time of the night and a real person to show up. And, we had to budget for that expense, but it was a lot of raccoons, right? It's a lot of, you can tell guests not to bring food into their tent, but ultimately food would be left there, so it was a more animal related, but also like, can you come restart my fire at my fire pit? And everything in between. So noisy neighbor.
Yeah. We have we do fires, like we call them our little fire valets.
Same. Yep.
But by 11, and this is how we've conditioned them is, all right, guys, are you all set here? Okay, we're headed out. If it's an emergency, you have the phone number. Otherwise, we'll see you in the morning for breakfast.
I think it's also because we had 72 units. There's got to be a breaking point of like occupancy to like number of requests.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we have 24.
Ben, overnight staff, you guys aren't getting a lot of calls, and it seems like it's not coming up on your review of lack of service. So obviously you're messaging out of that pretty well.
Yeah, I really think that people today, I know having somebody on site and being able to come to the unit if needed is crucial. And we do have that ability if needed. But just having somebody that can answer the phone very quickly or answer a message very quickly and kind of reassure somebody that sometimes it's dumb questions, as you know, Jacob, right? It's not like stuff that requires somebody on staff. It's like, I don't know how to use the thermostat or something like that. And our offshore team can fully handle those kind of requests. And I just think the speed at which we respond, because we have that 24/7 offshore team, really assuages a lot of concerns and makes guests feel safe and secure. And if we need to, emergency dial our on-site staff so that they can go over to the guest, we can, but it very, very rarely happens, similar to Irene's experience, I would say.
Like ours was more like visiting your family member's house so that you could just knock on that person's bedroom door if you wanted something from the fridge. I mean, honestly, listening to you guys, I'm like, hope none of the people I've worked for in the past hear this, because I'm always heavy on the labor, always heavy on the overnight, always heavy, and spent 6 years saying, no, we need this. To have it all undone in the last 20 minutes is really exciting for my operating background. So thank you for that, both of you. Can we talk about tech integrations a little bit, Nick? Can we pivot to that?
Uh-huh.
So a lot of autonomous integrations for your property management system. Maybe Irene, do you want to start who you're using for your PMS and how much interfacing are you doing on autopilot and how much is manual lifts as far as experiences, reservation notes? And then Ben, you've previewed your interface with your adventure booking a little bit, but maybe kind of dig into what interfaces you're using, what you're not using.
So this is embarrassing. It's the one area we don't do well. So we use Little Hoteliers, our booking platform, which was very basic. I think we pay like $112 a month to get reservations, does our payment processing, holds all of our guest data. Everything else, 100% of everything else is manual. Like we might as well be doing snail mail and writing like the calendar on, like, you wonder who buys that calendar that's at Walmart, that's, that tears. It's the fields every year. We're like, when is that wedding? Go to the calendar and look. I mean, that's how primitive it is. And part of it is we have such a strong team. So we have a chef who is incredible, trained at, did a lot of her younger years with Let Us Entertain You. But to catch up like with a phone and Wi-Fi and all the other systems, not happening. And it's not fair to hire for that skill set when her skill set is cooking and managing, food for guests. Similarly, we have somebody who is incredible with guests. Like I would trust them with a tornado, a bear, anything, and they write everything on a sheet of paper. Our massage therapist, we asked her, could you put your massages in a Google Doc for us so we at least can keep track of a calendar for you? Not happening. But she's 60 years old and is literally, everybody says it's the best massage they've ever had. So we've had to adapt, and it's actually probably the really sweet spot of camp that it's handwritten snail mail, phone communications, which maybe is why our guest demographic is, I'll say 40 and above, who spend $500 a night on an accommodation. That's nostalgic to them. To actually pick up the phone and talk to somebody that you're actually going to see on site. So that is not an area we are zero techie, zero.
My question was, do you think that is part of the value, and do you intend to change it completely? Do you intend to change it a little bit, or do you want to keep it exactly as it is?
I think some balls get dropped, revenue balls get dropped, right? It's like lost revenue because everything is still written on by hand. And it's not as quick as perhaps what Ben can do. And there's nobody offshore who is sitting at a desk. I mean, I will use our office manager. She's got 5 kids. She grew up on the farm right next door to us. She's probably bouncing a child while talking to somebody on the phone, planning a $250,000 wedding. All of that seems to work. And so we take some of the pluses with some of the minuses. It seems very charming and endearing to our guests. When I hear from guests that like, I don't want to talk to anybody and just give me a code for my door and that'll be great, then I know that we have expired.
You should send them to Ben in that case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I will say I'm not the expert in our company or related to Onera when it comes to tech stack. I know our providers. My chief of staff really has run that process, and we actually shifted from we were on Cloudbeds, and now more recently we've moved to Track, which is part of TravelNet Solutions, which is I guess the opposite of Irene in terms of it's kind of the Rolls Royce. Lot of functionality, pretty expensive implementation. And we found a little bit of like with a lot of functionality and customizability, there can be some hiccups and issues because they have to, there's a big tech support team on their side that will have to fix things that are custom or change things. So sometimes like simplicity is better, and something to think about that we've had to learn the hard way a little bit as we've moved to Track. But overall, I mean, the tracking and reporting we get has really, some of it's been pushed upon us and pressured upon us by the REIT. They're an institutional investor, right? They want to see, attribution from organic social media, which is next to impossible. But Track can help us do it better than almost anyone else. So that's one reason we moved to them, because I don't want to get too into the weeds with this, but most of these PMSs have booking engines. And those booking engines, like once you leave the website, you go to the booking engine, a lot of the data will get lost, and you can't use a lot of that data when you're funneling guests to your website. So that's led to a lot of lost information that we need to be able to kind of prove ROI and attribution and things like that. So that's on the PMS side. We use, I think it's called Akia, is the new kind of unified messaging inbox we use that kind of allows our offshore team team and everybody on our ops side to be communicating in one platform across, Airbnb, text, whatever it may be. And what else? I think we use Aperto, which also has some, like, in addition to door access control, remote access, things like that. It also has some, like, cleaning checklist and sort of operational efficiency type components as well that we're using. So those are just a few. I mean, we spend more money on software per month than I care to disclose. But we're trying to have it be as seamless of a process and leverage our team's time as best as possible. Now, with all that said, we automate some of the messaging, but I would say probably well over 80%, even maybe 90% is manual when it comes to messaging guests. And part of that is scalable and sustainable for us because we do have low cost labor overseas. And it does provide some of that personal touch, even though it is, remote. You're still talking to a live person and not a bot or and maybe AI will get there, but it's not quite there yet for us.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we had some canned responses in we used ResNexus, but we used it for everything, their booking engine, the PMS, and their text messaging all in one suite. So that was helpful. We had some, canned responses based on if a guest asked, what's the Wi-Fi, then there would be a personalized message, but it was canned, right, on the Wi-Fi password and quiet hours and whatnot. So it doesn't sound like you guys are too, different, right? But also, like, guests are still getting the results and the responses that they need. They're still getting access to the information.
I was interested by a comment Irene made about how your audiences or your guests are generally kind of 40 plus, which to me seems maybe slightly older than the average age for glamping, whereas Ben, I would imagine yours is maybe slightly younger, and I'm interested as to whether you think that's the older crowd preferring the more traditional hands-on hospitality versus maybe a younger crowd having a slight preference for the kind of we don't see any staff the whole time kind of model. Would you agree, disagree with that, both of you? Or?
I would say in terms of our guest profile, I mean, we're anywhere from, high 20s to well over, 60, even, upwards of 70 plus. We get plenty of, baby boomers as well as millennials and, even getting into to Gen X a little bit. But just given our price point, most of our guests are going to be 30 plus. And I'd say that 30 to 50 range is probably our sweet spot.
One thing that I've been kind of throwing around in my mind a little bit is, obviously, as you said, kind of age or financial status dictates your ability to partake in glamping, right? There's not many Gen Z that are built up the resources to be able to spend $500 a night on a glamping stay. But are you thinking about how you appeal to Gen Z when they do have the resources? Because it's only going to be a matter of years, right? So are you planning ahead for that? How do you think their expectations and taste will differ to millennials, for example?
We probably have to get on TikTok. So we've been working on that. Pretty much all of our organic social media is Instagram right now, and we funnel like 80% of our bookings through Instagram. And TikTok is like kind of high on the priority list, and we know that Gen Z is skewing a little more in that direction. So that's probably the main way. I think that the remote check-in, highly shareable, experiences, and very photogenic and good on video, like our units, our landscape, et cetera, caters to Gen Z just as well as it does millennials. So I think there's a lot of crossover there.
Irene, where do you get most of your bookings from?
So initially, very similar to Ben, it came through Instagram. But we don't use it as a tool anymore. Now we're in year 6. We have such a high return, and we sell out almost a year in advance. So for us, I don't even know anymore where they come from, because when you're starting to sell out a year in advance, you're like, we're not tracking it anymore. But I would tell you one of the things, and it's so interesting that Ben talks about this, because when we sat down a couple years ago, we met with the marketing team and we said, all right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about kind of where we want to look at. And they said, just to Ben's point, your new guest is likely going to be living in TikTok, and talk about something that turned into a nightmare at camp. So nothing will turn away your return guests like a guest that they don't, specifically in our realm, which we have, one of our pillars is community. So there's a lot of community based moments. And again, I'll use Montage as an example. When you go to their properties, isn't Montage the one that they do the saber at 5 o'clock, with the champagne, and they just have moments that bring everybody together. Nothing will scare away your current guest like a influencer taking photos and videos in the middle of adults doing something different. Like, it's such a turnoff for the rest of them. So we actually had to kind of go, oh boy, maybe we're introducing an element that would deter our current and returning guests by entering in, I don't want to call it a new generation, but really a new generation behaving in a way that they're actually escaping from. So I know that that's going to be something we're going to have to approach, but
I was going to say, keep that on your agenda for now until the millennia,
Gen Z have different social etiquette. Like, there's a lot of noise online at the minute about Gen Z like just playing things on their phone out loud with no headphones in, like just scrolling TikTok on trains in public, and it's like, yeah, I don't think that's going to go down very well at a glamping site. But
yeah, so that's just some of the things that, and again, when you have one location and you're moving the levers and you're able to kind of curate your guests, which Ben and I are doing just differently, your guest is deciding what environment they're choosing to be in. Do we want, whether it's getaway? I mean, they all have their own persona. In this particular case, for our persona, it's like it doesn't invite that. We'll talk about social etiquette or social behavior, and it is polarizing to current guests. So we have to be a little bit protective of those guests that we've had. It's just interesting.
Do you think that's a product of being in Michigan, right? So I spent a lot of time in the Midwest. I've been in Wisconsin. I spent every summer there. I went to college in Wisconsin. Do you think that's the product of being where you are? Because I know Mendocino Grove, we were so close to the Bay Area that was just part of the culture of the Bay, right? Like, everyone's taking pictures, everyone's videoing at all times. Honestly, we wouldn't allow it during like a family dinner style setup, right, for the Grove. But
Yeah.
if you were to go closer to an East Coast or a West Coast, do you feel like you'd have to bend the knee on that a little bit, or is that the Fields brand? Like, because
I think it's the Fields brand. And I'll use it because majority of our clientele are either fly-ins or drive-ins. But if they're driving in, they're high net worth individuals that live in Chicago, Detroit, these metropolitan cities that have strong popular culture. But I think that just like the Ritz-Carlton, and I'll use that because that feels, I don't want to say old and stuffy. That's my husband's favorite brand, which I feel like is so old and tired, and has a different demographic. I think that it's just related to the Fields. And I don't know how it was created. It could have just been how it evolved over time. But it certainly is not necessarily, I don't want to use the word Michigan, but travel in this area. We're 3 miles from Lake Michigan, where everybody has their phone out catching a social media post, a picture of the sunset. I think it's just us.
which is okay. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like you're in year 3 and you're like, oh, I hope this works, right? Like, clearly,
Yeah.
you're established. It's fine. It's year 6.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it would have broke. The ball would have dropped by now, right? If it was going to
Yeah.
drop. And then I think you're both creating destinations, right? Your destination is a little bit undercover, Irene, right? If you're like this, and this was the Grove forever. I mean, for 7 years, this was the Grove, like return guest at 60% rate, right? Didn't matter the ADR, they could bank on the experience. This is what it looked like. We aren't going to go there. We started shifting for Mendocino Grove because we have an indoor hospitality project in the pipeline. So we needed a more public outward. I mean, I think Mendocino Grove has 60,000 Instagram followers now or something. We needed to start moving the needle in that way because of future projects and scalability. We had to have more of an online presence. But
Yeah.
the brand did very well as just that secret little thing in Mendocino for a really long time until we didn't have to be. Where Ben is building also a community and a brand that's definitely, I don't know, the Texas market is a little bit different too, Ben, right? So if you want to talk about your brand building through a digital eye a little bit and how you guys see that for Onera.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're all in on social media and sort of being as present as possible and, attracting a guest that wants to share on social because that helps to create more exposure for us, right? And bring in additional guests, additional eyeballs. So we work with quite a few influencers. I'm launching a new hotel right now, Onera Wimberley, our second location, and I think we have 15 influencers scheduled, for our kickoff and counting. And we had an influencer come and stay. We're doing soft opening right now, and first post is going to hit 1 million views, and that account had 0 followers. Now it has 15,000 in like a matter of days. So we're trying to grow an audience very quickly, especially when we're launching. We're not trying to take years to stabilize, and we were able to do that with Onera Fredericksburg. Granted, it was only 11 or 8 keys when we opened, and then 11. We added 3 more later, but we were hitting $500 to $600 ADR and occupancies in the 80s to even upwards of 90% out the gate with that property. So, we may not be able to do that with a 28 key property, especially with some economic and market headwinds, but I think we can get close if we leverage as many, of the local influencers, and we've gotten really good at content ourselves. So we produce a lot of this content in-house now. So we have videographers, editors, copywriters, social media managers. Like on the Awasi side, we have a full team that we can leverage in order to do social as best we can, to create highly engaging content where guests feel like they're there, they get a taste of the experience, and like they can't help themselves but want to stay. And look, Texas Hill Country, there's a lot of product coming online. It's become kind of a hot market. And so, on Airbnb, it's just littered, right, with tons and tons of outdoor experiences, glamping, landscape hotel type units, and there's more coming. So the best way we can stand out is to kill it on social, have the biggest following, have the biggest brand awareness, and create the coolest stays in the market, right? That's something that we try to do, and we've heavily invested in CapEx, right, in our units to create one-of-a-kind designs that, guests feel like they have to come and experience, and video and photo and share.
Yeah, I think even how you guys speak about your properties are different, right? There's a outdoor hotel, there's a treehouse hotel, there's a landscape hotel, and then there's like camp, right? And like I think that's also goes back to like kind of the grassroots of it all and what you guys are trying to hearken to, right? Like Ben, you're trying to hearken to new product, new design, new development, a little cutting edge from what that can look like, and can we change the form around the fauna, right? Where Irene is hearkening back to a very nostalgic, I'm not going to sleep on a camp pad anymore. I will take my heated mattress. Thank you so much. Which is definitely, I think, where we were aligning at Mendocino Grove. But it's neither here nor there. You both are building brands in a different way, I would say. If that's like a fair summation of how I see the fields versus Onera.
I'm slightly conscious of the time, but I did want to ask because it's rare that we get 2 operators on the same call at the same time. Is there any particular challenges that either of you are kind of dealing with at the minute that's at the top of your mind that maybe it would help to share or discuss, or that you're just trying to figure out at the minute? Ben, I'm sure yours is capital related, but
Yeah, I actually at the moment it's we're launching a hotel. I don't care how good your team is and how big it is. Like launching a hotel is always a whirlwind. So I'm not as crazy as I was when I opened Onera Fredericksburg. And that it's a bigger property at Wimberley. So I think that's a testament to our team and people and the rockstar GM that we hired ahead of opening. A couple months, not like when we were already open and I was running around dealing with stuff. So it's definitely going smoother. But yeah, that's my biggest challenge right now. We're trying to open up a new hotel. The one other thing I do want to say is that with future concepts, and we have one planned, another one in the Hill Country that'll be more amenity heavy. So Awasi Hill Country, our next project, F&B, on-site spa, bigger event space. Like we will have more staff, and so we'll be moving a little bit from where we are, not to where Irene is, but shifting a little bit over in that direction. So certainly see the merits of that. And I think the farther you are outside of a town or a market with restaurants and bars and shops, like we are right next to Fredericksburg, we're right next to Wimberley. The next property is going to be 20 minutes out, so you have to provide more on site for them, and I think that requires more staff. So,
Irene, you got any shit you're dealing with at the minute?
Yeah, so I was just trying to think of kind of the different challenges. Ben obviously has scaling without institutional money. Like, how do you scale? How do you grow cautiously without institutional money? So those are some of the areas that I've been thinking through. And do we just grow one really good, or do we bring on the complexity of multiple sites that Ben is doing? So that's kind of the juncture in the road that we're sitting at. There is something sweet about doing just one.
I was like, that was going to be my question, Irene. Do you even want to scale?
Yeah.
Like, do you even want to scale? Do you want to do that piece of it, right? Like the reason the Grove did it is because there was just a really good opportunity 6 miles away, right? And
Yeah.
we weren't out looking, right? But it just happened to pop up. Are you willing to have that? Or are you saying, no, I'm happy with the baseline that we've created and I want to grow that baseline?
I lean more towards the second.
Yeah.
The only thing that's compelling is, we do get a lot of calls and I'll not to knock boys or girls or make this about boys or girls, but there's a lot of females that are watching and going, how did you do that? And I have land and I'm trying to figure out how to do that. There is something that would be really fun to help other female entrepreneurs who wanted to do something like this, which let's just call it the fields of Wisconsin, the fields of upper, the UP, the fields of Indiana. And it's somebody who wants to do this same sort of boutique-y spot that's hyper local, specific to their area. So that is compelling to me.
What I just heard is Irene is breaking ground as the first franchisee in the glamping outdoor space. And I think that's excellent. And then that's what you do. And then you just teach them the hospitality. And it is the fields of Wisconsin and Maryland and Texas and Florida. That's it. Stop. That's it.
Don't think we haven't started to have those conversations. It's like, what are you going to do though? But I'm having so much fun doing this one. And I actually love the operator side of it. So it's, again.
Yeah, and just shifts to learning
We'll
and development
Yep.
and culture building, right? So you are doing
Yep.
the operator, you're just doing L&D and T&C instead of, sitting it.
Sounds like Jacob, you need to, you need a mentee, and her name is Irene.
Do both of you feel like you can go on vacation for a month and it won't have burned down by the time you're back?
I'll let you go, Ben.
So outside of opening a hotel, I do feel like that. So pre-Onera Wimberley opening, even when we were just in construction, I have an amazing GC group and co-developer in JB Chisholm, and like Banks Chisholm, the founder over there, is just incredible. So I feel super secure on that side. I have a great team on the management side. So yes, once the hotel is up and running, I was gone for 3 weeks doing minimal work in July. So certainly is possible. But opening a hotel would be crazy for me to be gone.
I can't do it in the season. And it's not because I don't want to, and it's not because I don't have a team that does it. There is this part of me, and I know it's wackadoo, that feels like I personally am responsible for everybody that comes and stays at the fields. That I've taken their money, they're staying on my property, and I have an obligation to them. So there is always this part that likes to be within earshot or distance, so that if something is not being executed perfectly, that I could, not that I'm the difference maker, but could swoop in and save the day. But I struggle with it, even still 6 years. And I think has more to do just with my personality. I have a real hard time letting go of control. Can you tell? So I think maybe we would get there, but I actually love it. It's my lifestyle, not my job. So going to camp is, the dogs go with me. We do a walkthrough in the morning. We'll do a walkthrough later. It's 3 miles up the road from my farmhouse. So for me, it's become my life. So it's also enjoyable. So there's just some complexities, but I definitely cannot take a vacation during the season. It's like impossible.
Jacob, do you have to go?
I do have to go. I just read a really weird thing. Yeah.
Cool.
Why not?
Okay,
I'm
cool.
having a great conversation here.
Yeah. No, I wish we could go on for another 2 hours, but unfortunately we're going to have to finish it there. But I thought that was really interesting, like the comparison, and there's also probably far more similarities than there are differences between what you two guys are doing. So Yeah, thank you guys. That was fantastic.
And I think like one note, I think both of you are going to be pulled to each other's spaces, right? Because that's just what it is. Like eventually, Irene, if you do start, I'm manifesting this as the first franchise of the outdoor glamping space. If that does happen, right, like there is going to be a tech stack that you'll have to get pulled for, or some sort of central comm in which those operators can be in your universe, and be allowed in that space. And Ben, as you expand and scale, and the more units, the more people, right? Like that's just what it is. So
Yep, definitely. Yeah, we're ready for it too. So, yeah, excited to up the hospitality.
Great.
Well, Ben, you're doing great stuff. Congratulations. I know how hard it is. So it's fun to watch.
You too. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know Fields has been around 6 years, so you're like OG over there.
OG, yes, old. That's it. Just old.
Always original, not old.
You're all old to me, so.
Yes.
All right, thank you guys.